Live from our 7 Tasmania studios, your nightly news with Kim Miller begins now.
Good evening. Leading the news tonight, Tasmanians who have suffered child sexual abuse have received a long-awaited apology from State Parliament. For more, we're joined by State political reporter Josh Duggan. Josh, it's been an emotional day.
It has, Kim. For many, today brought some closure to the trauma they've suffered. For others, it was an incredibly difficult day as they processed the abuse. Around 150 people attended the ceremony today, either inside Parliament House or here on the lawns. This apology is an important step after the public hearings for the Commission of Inquiry finished. Here's how it was delivered. Generations of abuse and cover-ups, harming our most vulnerable, finally recognised.
The Tasmanian Parliament unreservedly apologises to all victims and survivors of child sexual abuse in Tasmanian government institutions.
Victim survivors, families, whistleblowers and advocates gathered to hear the apology they'd waited so long for.
Our institutions have a responsibility to ensure the safety and well-being of children, and our institutions have clearly failed in that responsibility.
I want to acknowledge the extraordinary courage and resilience it has taken to come through such a devastating experience.
We hear you when you tell us that what happened to you as children and teenagers has afflicted every day of your adult lives.
Parliament House swung its doors open, welcoming victims into the public gallery and long room. Several more gathered outside. Countless others watched from afar or not at all.
They were heartfelt words. It certainly brought up a lot of emotion, not just in me, but those sitting around me. That was hard to see other broken people.
When, that section of people were mentioned, the people who had been in that type of institution, they certainly showed so much emotion.
The family of Zoe Duncan are sorry she wasn't here to see this day, but say she would have appreciated the sincerity.
And the heartfelt awareness of the isolation, the trauma and the damage that it does.
Today's recognition of the trauma caused is a key step in our state's path towards healing. But those here today were united in their calls for action, saying the journey cannot stop here.
We cannot have children in Tasmania at risk in this way ever again, so that hopefully today turns a page in history.
While these events that are symbolic and recognise the past are crucial to our healing, what is so important is that we work as a community on preventing them from happening in the first place.
A final report from the Commission of Inquiry will be handed down in May next year. The government has committed to implementing every recommendation. Josh Duggan, 7 Tasmania News.
And if you or anyone you know needs help or this story caused distress, contact the Sexual Assault Support Service on 1800 697 877. The defence has wrapped up its closing arguments in the murder trial of Burnie father Bobby Medcraft. Greg Richardson, the counsel for accused Cody Christopher Shane Sheehan, was last to present to the jury, asking them to consider the argument for self-defence. Justice Robert Pearce has started his closing summary before the jury retires to deliberate. Firefighters, teachers and child safety officers are among those walking off the job tomorrow afternoon as public sector strikes intensify. In question time today, the Premier Jeremy Rockcliffe defended his government's offer, which totals 9.5% over 3 years and also includes cash bonuses to fight the cost of living.
This is more competitive than most other states, and indeed more competitive than what the Australian government is offering its own workforce, Mr Speaker.
Unions have criticised the offer as still being outpaced by inflation. A reminder, most public schools, except for those with Year 11 and 12 exams, will close at 12:15 tomorrow afternoon. Greens founder Bob Brown says he will continue his fight to protect Tasmania's native forests despite being arrested. The former senator was charged with trespassing after a protest in the state's northeast today. He says logging is impacting breeding areas for the endangered swift parrot.
We've got plenty of wood in our plantations. That's where most of the jobs are as well. We should be protecting this magnificent region for the wildlife that's in it.
He is once again calling for logging of old-growth forest to be banned. The next round of local government elections could feature in-person voting. In response to a question from independent Christy Johnston, Local Government Minister Nick Street said the Tasmanian Electoral Commission will review several facets of the recent elections.
One of them will be the efficiency of postal voting and postal voting going forward. I am open to the discussion around having a polling day.
There was a return rate of 85% at the recent elections compared to around 92% for state and federal elections. The Premier has defended the state government's management of local mental health services. The Greens using question time to grill him on the issue following yesterday's AMA report card which found Tasmania lags behind the rest of the country. Jeremy Rockcliffe says hundreds of millions of dollars are being invested.
And we've committed $120 million to build 2 new mental health service precincts in the north and northwest of the state. Of course, Peacock Centre is coming online. That's a $20 million investment.
The Greens are calling for $500 million to be spent in the area. One of Hobart's busiest streets has been labelled the city's worst spot for car crashes. Davey Street surged up this year's AMI Crash Index rankings to claim the unwanted title, jumping from 7th last year to 1st. Macquarie Street was 2nd, while the Brooker Highway's Hobart stretch came in 3rd. The insurer says the most common type of crash is nose-to-tail accidents, urging drivers to be cautious behind the wheel.
Watch the distance in front of them, make sure they're sticking to the speed limit and ensure that they're not getting distracted by any of those common distractions such as mobile phones.
Last year's top-ranked crash hotspot, Argyle Street, fell to 8th. The contribution Tasmanian volunteers make to the community has been on full display today at a state conference. This year's event focused on the theme The Great Reset, exploring some of the lessons learned from COVID.
There's been a lot of regulation and structures that have come down through COVID and have been impacting on volunteering that we really need to address.
Tasmania's volunteer numbers are still recovering from the pandemic. Leaders say they hope to see more government support for those who stayed with the sector. Though design and planning work has begun on a solution to prevent further landslips on St Mary's Pass, State Growth will build a gabion retaining structure to fix the vital connection. Elephant Pass remains open to all road users with a reduced speed limit and a section reduced to 1 lane. And at Poatina, clean-up works are also complete, with damaged culverts, though, still to be replaced. New census data has shown Tasmania to be the second most preferred destination for people moving from interstate. According to the ABS, there was a net gain of more than 15,000 people since 2016. Queensland recorded the largest net gain with 100,000 people. A year after being named a UNESCO City of Gastronomy, Launceston's foodie credentials have been showcased to the world. Jane Bennett promoted Launceston's food industry to the global Engage and Taste conference in Malaysia.
To experience great food, to learn about innovative ways in which we produce and manage food, and we would like to also be a global leader in the management of waste.
Stakeholders will meet next month to fine-tune how the local gastronomy scene can have a bigger impact on Launceston. 14 Labradors have today graduated in Guide Dog Tasmania's largest ceremony to date. The new workers already changing the lives of our most vulnerable residents.
Tails wagging as they poured their way up on stage, these lovable Labradors are Guide Dog Tasmania's newest pack of graduates, having completed the first stage of training. Each pup allocated a profession to suit its personality, from guide, facility and companion roles to autism assistance for people like Ian Angove's 10-year-old son Cooper.
There's just always been something missing. His confidence is through the roof now in social situations. Before Ronnie, he would never have come in to today, let alone get on stage.
Ziggy receiving special recognition for helping grief-ridden witnesses through royal commissions.
She just goes up, leans on them, offers her paw, snuggles in.
Those who raised the graduates were also acknowledged for their hard work, as were the trainers who invested significant time into teaching the dogs life-changing skills. The process incredibly intricate and by no means cheap.
We rely very heavily on the Tasmanian community for philanthropy. Each dog costs around $50,000 to train.
And while it was the largest guide dog graduation to date, it doesn't mean demand has simmered. 10 Tasmanians still waiting on their own furry friend, as Guide Dogs Tasmania puts the call out for more community support. Brianna Boylan, 7 Tasmania News.
It might still be 47 days until Christmas, but the giving season has begun, with thousands of Tasmanian families expected to reach out for support this year. The Salvation Army is spreading the festive cheer, helping Kmart launch a special wishing tree appeal.
Getting into the spirit.
Christmas is a time to love.
Burnie Primary School's Grade 2s called in to help Kmart and the Salvation Army launch the 35th Wishing Tree Appeal.
We've been singing Christmas carols, some Christmas songs, where they've clapped a lot.
It's the first time Burnie Kmart's been able to host its launch party since the pandemic began.
Having the school today come in and the community come in and launch it properly has been fantastic.
Calls for Christmas assistance doubled last year, with 6,000 Tasmanian families reaching out for help. This year, the Salvos are expecting that number to climb even higher as cost of living pressures bite.
Those extra things like Christmas sometimes move onto the back burner and just become unobtainable for some families, but that's where we can step in.
They're calling for Tasmanians to leave gifts under wishing trees across the state, with presents for all ages welcome.
Christmas is not just about Santa. Well, Santa is a part of it. But Christmas really is about sharing time with your family and friends and making good memories.
Annie Green, 7 Tasmania News.
Well, Homegrown Music and Arts Festival Party in the Paddock is back, announcing what it says is its biggest lineup to date. Aussie rockers Gang of Youths are set to headline following a whirlwind European tour. The fan favourite festival has found a new home, moving to Quercus Park. Tickets go on sale next week.
Good evening. Records have tumbled in the Hobart Hurricanes' thumping of the Melbourne Renegades in the WBBL. The Canes knocked them over with 56 balls to spare, the quickest demolition of a rival in team history, to keep the finals within reach. A statement from a team which hasn't made finals since 2017.
They close the gap on the top four.
A demolition job on the Melbourne Renegades. It started with the best bowling performance in Hurricanes history.
Is she another victim? Yes.
The Renegades all out for just 80, the lowest score for a side this season. Chief destroyer Molly Strano returned to the top of the WBBL's all-time wicket-taker list.
Press switch out for a second ball duck. Strano back to the top of the charts.
Her 4 for 16 shell-shocked the Renegades. The hapless visitors were in disarray.
Big problems out.
Newtown's Amy Smith sealed their dismal innings by setting off a skyball. Elise Villani made sure the game would be wrapped up in just over 2 hours.
Well played, really well played.
An unbeaten 41 guiding the Hurricanes to an 8-wicket win after just 10.4 overs.
I had a pretty decent night tonight. Always enjoy bowling in the power play, and it's the first time I've ever bowled in the surge, so that was an experience.
The lopsided victory has the Canes 2 points shy of 4th placed Perth with the game in hand. Next up is the 2nd placed Adelaide Strikers on Friday. Tasmania's Sia Deans hit a 3-pointer in his college basketball debut for the Jacksonville Dolphins. A tough start for the team though, Jacksonville going down to Duke University by 27 points. And Tasmania has had its first win in the top division of the AFL Inclusion Carnival. Players belted out the song after downing Western Australia by 15 points in the Barossa Valley. They're back in action tomorrow for a big State of Origin showdown against Victoria. The 12-a-side carnival is for players with an intellectual disability.
Good evening. Plenty of sunshine across the state today, with Bushy Park the top at 28, Launceston 26, 25 in Hobart, and Burnie and Devonport both reach 19. Luncheon Hill, Grove, Strawn all reach 26, 25 at Friendly Beaches and on King Island, Flinders Island 23 and a top of 22 at St Helens. Cloud developed over inland parts of the state today, with a bank of sea fog over the Bass Strait moving across parts of the north coast throughout the afternoon. Looking further out, areas of cloud and embedded thunderstorms can be seen over parts of WA, the Northern Territory and inland South Australia, and there's some isolated cloud and thunderstorms also lying over the northern tropics. Tomorrow's chart shows a high pressure centre over the Tasman Sea, extending to a reach across the eastern parts of the country, then directing to a northeasterly airstream over Tasmania. East to northeasterly winds of 10 to 20 knots, reaching up to 25 knots about the east and northwest throughout the day. And there's a strong wind warning for the far northwest coast, east of Flinders Island, and the lower and south east coast. Mostly sunny in Hobart tomorrow and a top of 26 for Geeston and Bothwell. 28 in Launceston, mostly sunny in Devonport and Cressy, 27. Burnie partly cloudy, 26 in Strawn and 22 in Curry. St Helens partly cloudy, 24 in Swansea and Orford, 23. And tomorrow's UV remains at very high 8s across the state. Showers developing about the west on Thursday before extending statewide during the afternoon and evening, and possible evening thunderstorms about the northwest. Friday, showers about the state with possible thunderstorms on King Island, and similar conditions on Saturday with a top of 18 in Hobart and St Helens. Mostly sunny in Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne tomorrow, Adelaide 32 and a top of 38 for Alice Springs. Right now in Hobart it's mostly cloudy, Launceston 21, Devonport partly cloudy and 17, and Kim Murph has returned from Bali, but don't stress, he doesn't have foot and mouth disease, he's most likely got foot in mouth disease.
Oh, very harsh, Victoria, but possibly true. Well, before we leave you tonight, after the sun sets this evening, if you gaze into the night sky, you'll likely be seeing red. The moon will turn shades of blood red tonight in what's said to be the last total lunar eclipse for 3 years. The lunar phenomenon will be visible in Tasmania from 7:54, so long as the skies are clear, of course. It's set to peak just before 10 p.m. And that is all your news for now. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thanks for joining us. Good night.